Okay, we're here. This is the CoinSpice Show, episode 3 on our YouTube channel, and it's the 26th of May today. But we've got with us a special guest, and it's the Bitcoin ABC lead developer, Amaury Séchet, all the way from France. And I've also got
Hey,
with me our usual co host on CoinSpice, Corentin Mercier, also another Frenchman.
hey.
And we've put together a special episode today to discuss some very important issues relating to the Bitcoin Cash network. There are some challenges that we're currently facing, and these need to be addressed seriously. Otherwise, it may not end up well for Bitcoin Cash. And we have faced many threats over the last couple of years, and somehow it's still alive. But who knows how many more chances we're going to get at this for a peer-to-peer electronic cash system to succeed. And Amaury has been venting his concerns online as well. I've taken notice of this, so I thought it would be good to get this all on video and have a discussion about it. So, Amaury, what can you tell us about these issues that are currently Bitcoin Cash needs to overcome?
So I think you were talking about funding there. That was the big elephant in the room. Um, so I think there is a bit of a misconception in the Bitcoin Cash community. I think we need to break that up, otherwise everything that we discuss later won't make any sense. And that misconception is that somehow uh, Bitcoin was hijacked by Blockstream and like good old Bitcoin developer were robbed out of the direction of the project or something like that. And uh, this idea is successful because there is some truth to it. Let's not be completely uh, completely blind here. There is definitively some truth to that, but it's not the whole story. And I think the second part of the story is not as good looking for the big block side, and I think this is why people are a bit more reluctant to look at it on our side. But the truth is that company like Blockstream, they funded development, and others did not really do it as much, or at least not to the same extent. And so they found themselves in a position where they had tremendous influence on the future direction of the project. And then it turns out that they have products such as Liquid that rely on the fact that the blocks are small. Essentially, like most of the value proposition of Liquid goes away when blocks are big. And so because they are funding most of the development work, you should expect them to not go in that direction, not go in a direction that would undermine their main product. And that's not evil or anything. That's just good businesses. Even though that's not what we want, from their perspective, it's good business. And so we need to be looking at that, and we need to understand it, because if we don't, the same kind of pattern it's gonna reproduce over time.
Yes, exactly. And that's a good way to put it. I haven't heard anyone put it that way before, but it's totally correct, I would say. Um, and basically, yeah, if people want to achieve their goals, they need to compete against the other people that are trying to uh, pursue their best interests, right? So
Mm.
this is all about the free market, I guess, and which uh, which ideologies or like which direction will succeed in the end on Bitcoin, or which one will be the more dominant. It may not succeed, but
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
one may have control over the others, and yeah, we're in a situation right now where there is a lack of funding in the camp that is trying to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So
yeah, so we got to realize that if we want to be world scale money, we essentially need a world-class team. That's that's pretty much unavoidable. There is a ton of challenges. Big company have scaled very big, like Google or Facebook or Amazon or whatnot. So many of the solutions to those problems are known, but it doesn't mean that it comes out of the box and there is no work to do. There is actually a ton of work to do, and the people we need to attract that know how to do this, well, they work for Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple and whatnot. And so we need to be attractive, because those companies, they propose very interesting challenges to work on. They pay well, and I mean, they are just like good job, and not just for the money. Actually, they are good job in general. And so if we don't have the problem is that if we don't have an attractive value proposition for this kind of people, we're not going to attract them. And if we're not going to attract them, we are not going to scale big. And so instead of running into an artificial limit that has been put in place, like Bitcoin run into, we're going to run into technical limits that prevents us to scale bigger.
Right. And you've also talked a lot about this thing called technical debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Where basically you're having to fix these issues that haven't been, they were not solved earlier on, and now we're like struggling to catch up and get ahead of it all now.
Yes. Yeah. So the Bitcoin decode base is notoriously notoriously bad. I think you can ask pretty much anyone who worked on it, and they would confirm that. And so, yeah, the idea of technical debt is, it's called that way because it's very similar to financial debt, or just debt. Usually we call it, in the sense that this is something you are paying interest over time, and you need to pay back. And if you don't pay it back, you're gonna go bankrupt. So the way it presents itself, because it's technical, it's in the code, it's not a bill that you have to pay every few months or so. But it's like when you have some piece of code that is built in a way that don't make a lot of sense, or that is not quite right, then you have more bugs with that piece of code, right? And it's more difficult to change it when you need to, you need to change it, say, to support larger capacity or to support some new feature. Well, when you want to do that, it's more difficult. And all of those is just like a drain on the development effort. And so while you have not paid the debt, you essentially have to pay interest, which is like this drain on the development effort that is like, more bug, it's more difficult to evolve the code and stuff like that. And then at some point you need to pay back, the principal of debt, which is when you actually rewrite that part of the software in a way that makes more sense, and that don't force you to pay interest. And so there is a huge amount of technical debt in the Bitcoin decode base. That's not a secret. Anyone knows it, and this is something we need to keep under control.
Right.
Yeah, this is something we need to keep under control, because we need to modify that code base. We know we need to modify that code base to get to a point where we can support more transaction capacities and stuff like that. And it's very difficult to modify it right now because of the amount of technical debt there is in.
Right. And basically, the protocol development team, then in this case ABC, it's currently short-staffed, and essentially it's an overwhelming task to be challenging with the amount of people that are available to do this at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. So we have essentially like two high priority items that we cannot really we cannot really do much about. Like, we have to do them. And the first one is keeping technical debt under control, because if we don't do that, we are just, avoiding some pain right now to have like much bigger pain later. And we may not, we may not survive it, because the amount of debt is already quite high. And so accumulating more is, a good way to go bankrupt, if we want to push the analogy further. And the second one is that we need to do a few changes to the consensus rules. Not that many, but we need to do them if we want to make the system more scalable. And because there are more and more ecosystem that is built on top of the chain, making those changes more and more costly over time, right? So not doing them, like if we say, okay, we don't do them now, we're gonna do them like in 6 months or a year or 2 years. But if we continue growing the same way, it may not be possible to do them in a year or 2 years or whatever. So we kind of are stuck with trying to get as many of them as possible as soon as possible. And those two items like pretty much suck up every single cycle that we have. And so that means that we have no spare bandwidth to do like pretty much anything else. And people want new feature like graphene or its similar or whatever to transmit block faster. People want to improve the parallelism of the node to make sure that we can have higher throughput and stuff like that. And unfortunately, those items, they have to take the back burner. There are also work on fees that we would like to do, because right now the whole fee structure is made in a way that don't make a lot of sense for BCH, right? Because it's made with the assumption that the blocks are full most of the time, right? And so the way the whole system works is built around that assumption, which is an assumption that doesn't hold on BCH. And so we could do many cool stuff if we could refactor the way the fee work, but same stuff, there is a lot of refactoring to be done or paying back technical debt before we can actually make that happen. So one idea, for instance, that is very popular is reintroducing some free transaction. Okay, so I don't know when you guys joined Bitcoin, but in the early days of Bitcoin, part of the transaction were free. And the way it worked is that if you spend coins that were old enough, you could do so for free, right? And the reason is you don't want to allow all transactions for free, because you open denial of attack kind of scenarios where someone can do very, very many transactions for free and overload the capacity of the network. But you cannot fake time. Time is like a scarce resource. So if the coins that you spend are old enough, then you make a transaction, the transaction moves the coin somewhere else, the new coins are young, right? So if you would want to respend those young coins, you would have to pay a fee, but for the old ones, you don't need to pay a fee. So if you do transaction once in a while, then you don't need to pay that much fee, and most of your transactions are going to be free. And we're still protected against denial of attack. And so this is something that existed in the early days of Bitcoin that a lot of people want to reintroduce, but we are not in a position where we can do that, or rather where we can do that without compromising on something else. Like, we could do that by racking up even more technical debt, but it's just not wise. At some point something is gonna crack. So there is a ton of stuff like that a lot of people want, and that we want to do as well, but it's just not wise to do them.
Right.
Then so if we push too much on feature without taking technical debt under control, we're just gonna have more bugs and more like weird stuff that happen with the code over time.
So all these great features like graphene, X thinner, and more, they're basically on the back burner because there's a whole lot of technical debt that needs to get it needs to be dealt with. It needs to get out of the way. What is it going to take to get this out? And let's say the next year, get rid of all the technical debt. What do you need? Because that would probably allow enough time to how about we say aim for the deadline of before the hard fork that happens in like May 2020. So you'd have about 9 months then to make all these changes and get it in the code review before it is actually
So
hard forked.
if you want, so the thing is, this is an incentive problem, right? So people who come and go with the code base will want to build something new, right? And the people who actually have an incentive to keep the technical debt under control are the people who work on the code base long term, because those are the ones who are going to deal with the pain of having accumulated the debt, right? And so that means that if we want to get this technical debt under control, we just need to have, more people who work on the code base, for extended period of time, because those people are going to find themselves having the incentive to do it, and we can also assign them to do it. I mean, like this is this is one of the things you get to do when you pay people. You can decide what they work on.
This is true.
But yeah. But if we, right now there is a lot of people that come and go, and they want to develop this or that feature. The problem is that while doing so, you rack up even more technical debt, essentially.
Okay. Any comments on any of this, Corentin? Let's hear from you.
Yes, actually, I wanted to know what solution would you come up with? So there's a lack of funding. So of course, well, there needs funding. And who do you address to, and who do you think should pay and fund those developers? I know miners and major investors in Bitcoin Cash do so. I also know, oh, sorry, I think my camera went off. But I also know that currently on bitcoincash.org, we're raising donations that will go to infrastructure developers. We're currently building this. Do you think about any other people who could help with that, and any solution to make working on Bitcoin Cash more attractive and attract those developers who would want to work on the code base or work on the protocol?
Yeah, so if we want to look at solution that works, we need to look at what exists in the space. Or what I mean is not especially in the cryptocurrency space, but in the open source infrastructure kind of software space. And you see that there are essentially two models that work. And one of them is that you have a company that also fund whatever infrastructure project and build services on top of that. So this is essentially what Blockstream is doing, right? Mm-hmm. And if you want to step out of the crypto space, this is what companies like WordPress, for instance, are doing, right? They are building this website platform where you can publish content and stuff like that. And so all of this is open source, and you can get that software and run it and run your website with it. But they also provide a bunch of services. So for instance, they can host a WordPress site for you, and they charge you, I don't know, I don't know much, but they charge you every month for the service of doing so. And they are very qualified for doing so, because obviously they wrote the software, so nobody knows better than them, oh, this needs to be done. And so because of that, they get, a market advantage on that service. So that's one way to do it, and that's what Blockstream is doing, right? And the other way to do it is that, and it's usually more how it works for very, stuff that are deep in the stack, like very, very low level infrastructure, is that you have various companies that, rely on the fact that this infrastructure works well for their businesses. Mm-hmm. And those companies are either gonna donate to, some kind of association or foundation or whatever, it has different name in different projects, but that hire a few people to take care of it, or they are gonna hire people internally to work on it full time. And this is what's happening for projects like Linux, right? So the Linux kernel is developed mostly by server company, cloud company, this kind of people, right? So because you are IBM and you sell servers to big company. Well, you want Linux to work well on your servers, right? Because this is added value for you, so that you can sell essentially your server to your customers. And so even though like they don't sell Linux per se, they sell server that run Linux, and if Linux works well on their server, well, this is added value for their servers, right? And so you have competitors such as HP, for instance, which also makes a lot of servers. Well, they want the same thing, and they also want to contribute, because if only IBM do it, they may do it in a way that is good for IBM server but bad for HP servers, right? So you kind of like have an incentive for both to get involved, and then you have company like Google or Facebook or Amazon or whatnot that have many servers. Especially Google, not only they have many servers, but they have all the Android phones additionally, and all of those run the Linux kernel, right? So they have, even though same stuff, they are not selling. It's not their product, right? They are not selling Linux, but they have a strong incentive to make sure that it works well on all kind of phones, and that it works well on their server, right? So you get like various companies that don't have Linux on their product because nobody is selling Linux per se, but they have an incentive to make sure that Linux works very well. So in the cryptocurrency space, we have the same thing, right? There are companies that maybe are a payment processor, or they provide like various services and accept cryptocurrency as payment, or there are exchanges, or there are miners, or all those companies that rely on some infrastructure to work properly need to realize that if they don't step in, they are bound to have like Blockstream kind of event again and again and again, because there are just two models that works, and and one of the model require them to step up, and the other one is a Blockstream kind of model where you build the infrastructure to support your product.
Okay, so to sum up,
let's be honest, like we could do that. We could do that, right? But this is like, yeah, I don't think that would be perceived positively by the community, and this is not really what we want to do. So we'd rather go the second road, right? And the main reason is, if you want to do global peer-to-peer cash, you must not be partial toward your product. Okay, so let me try to unpack that. Say you're Amazon, you have like a huge amount of payments. Let's not talk about Bitcoin Cash. Say so Facebook, for instance, Facebook is releasing a cryptocurrency.
Global coin.
Yeah, this is the name it's gonna have.
Yeah, I think they're calling it global coin.
Okay, so Facebook is releasing global coin, right? And you're Amazon, and will Amazon accept global coin? Well, if I was Amazon, I would be very careful about this, because now I have a good chunk of my revenue stream that is, under control by Facebook, which better not to be a competitor at some point in the future, right? So you like, when you have a company that proposes a service and that makes the coins to support their service, you never know if you're not gonna find yourself on the wrong side of that deal. And this is what happened with the small block and the big block. There was a company that funded the infrastructure, and they wanted to move in some direction because of their product, and we found ourselves on the wrong side of it. So I think this way of working, even though it works, it's detrimental if you want to build worldwide peer-to-peer cash. And so I would try, I would want to try as much as possible to go for the alternative, like a more Linux-like way of doing things, before resorting to that.
Okay, so I know that companies, Bitmain, Bitcoin.com, and others have funded developers and fund developers. So do you think there needs more companies and exchanges that would actually send resources, or their fund developers to directly work on the protocol, if that sums up what you said.
Yeah, so
do you think the major companies should invest more?
Because, obviously, this is the bear market, so all of those companies have less resources than they used to have, right? And so right now it's a bit more difficult, but even before it was kind of a problem as well for different reasons, and mostly because the funding was extremely inefficient. Like a lot of group were funded and did not deliver much. I mean,
I can think
of the DCA, for instance. I can think of yours.org that ended up having like 1.5 million in funding, or 2 million, or even some absurd number like this.
What?
Total. Excuse me?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And so I feel that right now, like the market is coming back a little, but people are more hesitant to fund stuff than they were previously, because many people funded stuff and did not really get something that would meet their expectation, and I understand that, but that means that they need to focus funding on the people on Scoop that delivered over the past 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah, well, this is totally correct, and hopefully we see some change soon, and actually some good projects, people are doing good work, going to be delivering. Now,
yeah, so maybe Corentin, I think Corentin was working on some fundraiser stuff on bitcoincash.org. For people who don't know, Corentin is like one of the big contributor of bitcoincash.org, and so maybe you should talk about that.
Yeah, no, regarding what you were saying, I know Corbin, which is the maintainer for bitcoincash.org, has been working on a donation button, like widget, for bitcoincash.org, and so all funds would go directly to the infrastructure development. And I know other companies, bitcoin.com, probably are working on something similar. So yeah,
well, this is the good news. Yeah, you're right, there are people aware of this issue and they're trying to solve it now, but it might be another couple of months until we actually see something that's going to work really well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see when they do arrive. So
I think what Amaury mentioned directly is like, I think donations are not like sustainable in the same way that like big companies investing capital and developers. So
yeah, so effectively you have like the incentive for a product are different from the incentive for infrastructure.
Right.
So when you look at open source projects, some of them are funded by donation. Most of those are going to be projects that are very user facing, right? They provide a product or a service to user directly. So stuff like the Mozilla Foundation or Wikipedia, or like this kind of project, they have regular fundraiser for donations, and they seem to get a fair bit of amount of money from that. But it would be much more difficult to do so for the Linux kernel, or some compiler infrastructure, or some web server, or or some database system, or all those stuff that keeps things working, but are not just quite user facing. Then if you come to user to fund that, it's not going to be as effective.
Indeed. All right. So if all the concerns and everything has been laid out on the table there, we'll leave this particular issue at that. Hopefully we see some good solutions come out of this discussion, and what the people are already working on now. But in other Bitcoin Cash news, we had the network upgrade on like the 15th of May, and this we thought this was all going very smoothly. In our last video, we did a video as it happened, but shortly after this, it was found out that there was actually somebody exploiting a bug that was actually unrelated to the hard fork itself, but they had been sitting on this exploit. It's an older exploit that had that was in the existing code, and they were attempting to steal a large amount of funds, and they had waited for this hard fork period to exploit that because they had also opened many tens of millions worth of shorts on exchanges. And they were hoping to create maximum FUD at this point in time and to profit off it. But
so it seems to me, maybe it was the same person, but there was actually two attacks, and I suspect that those two attacks were run by two different attackers.
Right.
Yeah, none of them. So the upgrade actually activated, the way it was expected to. There was no problem per se with the upgrade, but I think people took the opportunity where everybody is looking at it to try to have the maximum impact, right? So if you if you run an attack and you plan, for instance, you open a bunch of short, and we don't know if the attacker did that, but we know that someone opened a bunch of short, roughly like coincidentally with the attack. So if you do that, you want your attack to be as visible as possible, so that the impact on the market is as big as possible, so you can make money out of your shorts. And so choosing a moment where everybody is looking at that, every single journalist or reporter is also looking at it because they know they want to write an article the next day or later the same day, then it's a good moment to do it.
Right. So yeah, this is what happened. Would you be able to give us a brief explanation of the second attack, the one that I didn't mention? Now this is the one that it's not like new information or anything, but it was brought up again just yesterday by these BTC maximalists, and basically what they'd done is they had sat on they didn't sit on the news, but they had basically coordinated together over the last couple of weeks certain talking points which they wanted to promote in an attempt to inflict further damage on the Bitcoin Cash network. And now they were basically saying that Bitcoin Cash miners did a 51% attack, and your coin's been 51% attacked, Bcash is insecure, and all this kind of thing. But in reality, this was not an attack, but the honest nodes, which is described in the white paper, these honest nodes collectively, with their hash rate, which was over 51%, was used to combat other attacking nodes on the network that were attempting to steal some funds. And basically they sabotaged that attack and it failed. So this was the outcome. That there was no funds stolen, nothing else was badly affected as a result of this. It was only the attacker's attack was foiled, and basically what we see here was these miners acting in the best interest of their investment and defending the value of Bitcoin Cash, the network which they're mining.
Yes. So it's very interesting, like this 51% attack idea, because what is a 51% attack and what is effectively a soft fork? There is no technical difference, right? So say when you activate Segwit, for instance, or any other soft fork, like they did on BTC, essentially you have the majority of miners that decide that they're gonna orphan blocks, starting now, they're gonna orphan blocks that don't respect the new set of rules that come in addition to the existing one. And this is a soft fork, but this is also what is a 51% attack, right? There is no technical difference. So what is the difference? Well, the difference is, are they doing so to do something that you like, or are they doing so to do something that you don't like, right? And if they do something that you like, then it's a soft fork. And if they do something that you do not like, then it's a hard fork. And if they do something that you like, then it's a hard fork. And if they do something that you like, then it's a soft fork. And if they do something that you don't like, then it's a hard fork. And if they do something that you like, then it's a soft fork. And if they do something that you don't like, then it's a soft fork. then it's a 51% attack. And value is inherently subjective, right? So some people may decide that it's a soft fork, and some people may decide that it's a 51% attack. But in that case, I think it's pretty clear cut because there is someone. So let's step back a bit and explain the issue. So Bitcoin deployed a technology on their chain called SegWit, where you set coins to some addresses, and those addresses, from the old rule, they are anyone can spend, right? They like anyone, according to the old rules, anyone can take those coins and spend them as if they were, yours or mine or anyone's, whoever is doing it. But they added a new set of rules on those specific coins, that is SegWit, that define, you can spend them securely and all of that. But on any chain that doesn't enforce SegWit, then those coins can be spent by anyone.
Right.
And so what we did on BCH is that we set up the rule in such a way that even though anyone can spend them because we don't have SegWit, we added rules that say that only a miner effectively can spend them. Like the nodes, they don't relay transactions that try to do anything with those coins by default, right? So even though it's not invalid, they just don't propagate the transaction or anything. So if you don't have hash rate, or if you have hash rate yourself or work with a miner who has some hash rate, you cannot get those transactions mined. And what happened is that sometimes people by mistake, they say in BCH instead of BTC to do some SegWit addresses. And this is one of the main motivations we introduced a new address format, about a year ago. It's to make this kind of mistake less likely, and all the business that adopted the new address format, they are telling us that the amount of mistakes and the amount of support they get out of that's reduced by 80%. And so message to businesses out there: adopt the new address format. This is good for you. But back to the issue, some did not, right? And so sometimes people send coins BCH by mistake to some of those SegWit addresses. And so someone rented some hash rate or diverted some hash rate that they own on BTC is a way to mine the block that were stealing a lot of those coins that have been sent to SegWit addresses. And also miner decided to not accept that block and instead send those coins back to the rightful owners. And it's very hard to argue in that case that it's a 51% attack. I think it's right. Pretty clear cut to most reasonable people that it should be seen more as a soft fork than as a 51% attack.
And you can even go and look at the blockchain, right, and verify that only these particular transactions that the attacker was dealing with were the only ones that were basically modified. Everything else remained the same. Yes. And they just orphaned off 2 blocks. So clearly these miners had been monitoring the network at the time. They detected this malicious activity going on, and they stopped it. And yep. I think most people would agree that, this is that was in the best interests of the network, because if that didn't happen, these people that are now attacking because we had a 2-block reorg, they would have been attacking because Bitcoin Cash is unsecure and has shit developers, and they allowed this hack to happen where all this money was stolen. So that would have been the alternative. Right.
The people were saying that they are not here to argue in good faith. So whatever happens, they're gonna find something to complain about it.
Basically.
It's fine. I think we should not, lend too much attention. If people, there are some actual issue with BCH, I'd say, and we discussed some earlier on here, but if those people are just gonna complain no matter what, then it doesn't really matter that they complain.
No, well, the only people complaining, it doesn't really seem like it's actually Bitcoin Cash people at all. It's the #1 arch enemy that hates our guts, and do we really care about what they think? Not really. And
Even
despite
then,
all this,
like it's not. I think it's not that much BTC people. Like I think there is a very loud minority. But if you look on Twitter, for instance, I'd be curious if someone could extract the exact, the exact numbers. But I'd be surprised if like the very influential people that get a lot about BCH, if there were more than a few hundreds of them. I'd be surprised. It doesn't seem like this is that many.
right? Yeah, it's well, yeah, we know what kind of tactics these people employ, so it comes as no surprise. But another thing that I found interesting about this incident and like the narrative that these people are trying to promote is that this was a 2-block reorg, but in the history of Bitcoin, there's actually been many reorgs before. And now this is the kind of person who is claiming that BTC is immune to this kind of thing happening. And if you go and look at the history of Bitcoin, there's been like accidental chain splits, and one in particular, after an accidental chain split, the Bitcoin core developers then worked with a miner, a single pool, to orphan what was at the time the longest chain, and basically they reorged 24 blocks. So that they do not think for a moment and look at events like these, and like when you compare the two, the Bitcoin Cash one that just happened and what I just mentioned, it's pretty clear which one is many times worse.
Yeah, though. So I'm not sure how good of an argument it is. That being said, this is absolutely true, but this is not because wars happen that this is good.
Yeah, of course. Like if we could avoid this happening to begin with, that'd be great.
In a perfect world, you would not ever see any orphan blocks, but in practice, this is not possible, right? Because the world is not synchronous. Blocks take time to propagate over the network and validate and so on. So in practice, you still have a small percentage of orphan blocks, and so one block dip happen once in a while, 2-block dips still happen naturally once in a while. It's it's fairly uncommon. Maybe it happens maybe like every few months or so. It's a very uncommon event. But 2-block dip reorgs happen. More than that, it's probably not natural, and in that case, it was not natural.
Okay, Corentin, do you have any comments on this event and what you've witnessed take place over the last couple of days in particular?
I think, as Amaury said, we don't really want to spend too much time on it. Like, as I think one tweet from Amaury was that we spend too much time on like our BTC. Most of the posts were bashing BTC, and like this is the same thing. We should like just keep on building, and
right. This is very much true.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what this is like it's nothing serious, especially like this reorg 2 blocks. No, we shouldn't spend too much time on it.
Right. Well, on that topic that you just mentioned, that's another problem that Bitcoin Cash faces at the moment. There's like too much lamenting on the past. Like we left BTC behind. Bitcoin Cash is basically an upgrade from the BTC roadmap, and these people are still clinging onto this. I think it's pretty clear that most people know that there are problems with BTC. Otherwise, its market dominance wouldn't have dropped from 90%. But they just went to other coins. So Bitcoin Cash should be focusing on itself and promoting Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Cash merits.
So I think it's interesting because it kind of loops back to what we were saying about funding in earlier in that discussion. I think a lot of that come from the fact that there are definitively a lot of stuff that the BCC people did wrong. I mean, like all the censorship on our Bitcoin, for instance, is like not really acceptable by any means. But there was wrong on both sides. I think they was wrong on the big block side to not be supportive of the people that they did the infrastructure for big blocks. And so they found themselves in a way where they were not able to steer the direction and the project in that way. And being very focused on what the other guy did wrong, I think, is a bit of a coping mechanism by the community because if you're like, okay, things went wrong because the other guy did all those bad stuff, then you don't really need to look at the bad stuff that you did yourself. But it's even though it's not enjoyable, it's not pleasant, but it's very important to look at what you do bad or what we do bad as a community. Because otherwise there is no growth possible. We're just gonna make the same mistake again and again. And so I think, it's still good to point out once in a while that there were those stuff that were done and that were not ethical and stuff like that. But if it's, the majority of the discussion or very, very large portion of the discussion, then there's something that is not healthy. And I think we are looking at a coping mechanism to, avoid introspection here.
So, this is not ideal, but I think maybe more people are becoming aware of this kind of thing. I think it's definitely not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, and let me be clear, like a lot of people were like, oh, the people who say that they want to censor some topic and stuff like that. And I mentioned in that tweet, a large portion of the community is behaving like a crazy ex-girlfriend, that's still obsessed 2 years after about what the ex did wrong. And censorship cannot fix crazy ex-girlfriend, right? We could censor it and we wouldn't see it anymore, right? That doesn't mean it's not there. And so that's not, at least that's not what I'm calling for. And I don't think that the people agree with me are calling for censorship either. It's more of a like growing up kind of thing, and growing out of that phase and moving to something else that is more constructive.
Right. And well, another good reason to stop lamenting on BTC and comparing that to BCH is the fact that there's always so many attacks on Bitcoin Cash from BTC people. Like, we're clearly a massive threat here, and they are paying close attention and actively trying to inflict damage on us at the same time. So we should just continue doing what we're doing and push ahead really hard with that great stuff that we're doing.
It's actually a very positive sign how much attack we get from the BTC people, because that means that they are considering us as a complete. But at the same time, if you understand that, then you get to understand that it's not good for us to be attacking BTC all the time, because essentially we are signaling insecurity to the market.
True. And you mentioned the crazy ex-girlfriend. I really feel like the BSV community is a bit like that. They give that kind of vibe to me, and I'm sure many people would agree with this. But no, we don't need to focus on any of these people. Just continue focusing on Bitcoin Cash. Invest your time and energy into Bitcoin Cash, and we will reap the benefits.
Yep.
Right. Another thing I wanted to talk about actually was the OP check data sig. Now, we've seen this cool tool that is going to be launching in like a week or two, local.bitcoin.com. If you haven't signed up yet, go and do it. But basically, what this platform is enabling is people to buy and sell Bitcoin Cash, and there is no third parties involved. So normally with this kind of a platform, the platform itself is acting as a third-party custodian of funds, and they have to KYC people by law. But OP Check Data SIG is actually enabling something, enabling us to not have a third party, and they're doing something called blind escrow. And basically the the platform is not even aware of like the amount of funds being traded or any of that other info. The money is just basically in like an oracle or something that is distributed to the other party when certain conditions are met, but it's still allowing the platform to act as an arbiter if there are disputes.
Yeah.
And what's funny is like this is awesome. Nobody else has got this kind of thing. Bitcoin Cash only coin to have something like this. But last year there was huge resistance to this being implemented on Bitcoin Cash, and now we're seeing some really great benefits from it having been implemented. Would you like to comment on this, Amaury?
Well, you said it all pretty much. Like verifying signature is just like extremely useful, and you can really build all kind of stuff from that you would not expect. Actually, a lot of people build stuff that I did not expect out of it. Like there is that project where you can send your coins to special addresses that essentially you need to move them back within the system every 6 months, and if you don't do it every 6 months, then it releases the coins to some other set of addresses, which is probably very good if you want to make sure that if something bad happened to you or whatever, the people that will be able to access your money in a few months. But as long as you are able to do one operation every 6 months or a year or every you can choose the time horizon you're looking at, then you're good and you're in full control of the funds. So this is something I did not see coming, but I think it's pretty cool. And yeah, there's like blind escrow. There is like various Oracle stuff that have been done. There's just a lot of feature that came of that I see, which is cool. Like this is why we did it. So
I've actually
it's like a Lego brick, right? And people are gonna build all kind of stuff out of that, and some of them you expect, and some of them you don't really see coming.
I've actually just met a team that's building a betting platform using this DSV, this DataSig opcode, and so this is like another useful tool that could be built with this.
Excellent. So yeah, I'm sure there's more things to come, but clearly this is something that has added great value to Bitcoin Cash. And it's no wonder that certain people were resisting this. Maybe they knew what was coming all along, and they had these ulterior motives, which have now been revealed where we stand today. So yeah. Anyway, boys, we are reaching nearly an hour of recording for this episode, so we'll bring this to a close.
To wrap up.
Yep. Would anyone like to add any closing statements about some of the things we've discussed today?
All
right then. Yeah. It's all been covered.
I'm not going to launch a new subject, just before the end.
Nah, but it's been good having you on here, Amaury. So thanks for taking the time, and I'm sure you'll be coming back on the show in the future. And we'll also be inviting plenty of other guests on here. There's so many great people in the Bitcoin Cash space doing cool things, and it is great to hear from all of them. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you.